So I've finally gone and drawn up the rack plans. They're now available to download from Gumroad. I've got them on available for free, but you can pay as much as you want if you want to support the channel. There'll be a link down in the description, and I'll put an end card up in the video as well. This video is just going to go through the plans in a little bit of detail, talk through what I've done, why I've done it, and hopefully it'll explain how to build. So it might be useful to sort of watch along while you build, or to watch in advance to decide whether this is going to be something that that you want to do. Anyway, without dragging this out any further, I'll just jump through the plans. These are the rack plans all set up and ready to go. First page is just a materials list. So we start off with the aluminium. We've got the shelves, that's the total size of the sheet material you need before folding. The base panel, back panel. I've used a slightly thinner panel for the back. You could go for 1.5mm if you want. I just want to keep the weight as light as possible, and it's slightly less expensive. It does the job. The uprights and all the rails, basically all the frame, is 25mm square bar with 1.5mm thick walls, and obviously all the exact lengths are there. For the aluminium, most suppliers will cut its size for you. I definitely recommend going down that route, even if you have to pay a small fee. It's just going to make your life a lot easier. It's going to save a lot of mess and cleanup and time. So for the fixings, first of all, I've used countersunk socket head screws. I've chosen these because they have the smallest head size, and when you countersink the holes, they'll sit really neatly inside. Countersunk washers are only used on the back. You don't have to go with those, but I would recommend it. As far as the quantities as well, just while I'm going, the screws tend to come in packs of 50. I think you use around 44 M6 screws and about 30 M4 screws, but you're probably going to buy a pack of 50 anyway. Same with the riv nuts. They just bought to suit. You want to get the countersunk head riv nuts. You can get some that sit proud, and they're fine, they do the job, but they will throw off the sizes a little bit. It just means that the front and back rails will be slightly off, so there'll be a small gap. I came across that problem on my original rack where I actually ordered the wrong riv nuts. The tube connectors, the top is steel reinforced, and the reason we've gone for steel reinforced is because we want to put the riv nuts into the tube connector rather than the upright. That just means that you're able to remove it and take it apart properly in the future, whereas if you put the riv nut through, I'll show you later anyway, but if you put it through, it just means you can't take the tube connector off once it's finished. Then at the base we've got threaded inserts. You don't have to go for the ones with threaded inserts. You can get casters that mount on or come with mounting plates that fit in the corners. That's the type I used with the original rack. Then we have cable clips. Again, I think the cable clips I bought came in a pack of 100. You won't need 100. You probably use maybe 50, maybe a bit more. Depends on how you run the cables. For the corner braces, flanged or gusseted corner brackets, they are just to stop forward and backward movement. So we've got the back panel stops the back from twisting side to side. The base panel stops it, keeps it all square, and then these braces just stop it tipping back and forth. Then the draft excluder tape, that's optional. I'll talk about that later. Then for heating, I've only shown the back heat version. Heat mats are fairly easy to set up anyway, and I'll show you how you can fit a heat mat under there. And then the tubs, this is all based around the WAM 42 litre underbed storage boxes, which we'll come on to in the next sheet. So yeah, there's the side and end views of the tubs. There was a photo on there, but it hasn't printed for some reason, but the photo's not really relevant. If you use a different tub, you can adjust the measurements to suit. If my tub was 10mm wider, I'd have to add 10mm to the shelves and front and end rails, front and back rails. Again, with the side, if you've got something longer, you might want to do that. If it's a bit deeper or a bit shallower, you might want to adjust the hole spacings and the overall height of the rack. So we'll start off with the shelf. So the dash lines here show where you're meant to fold. There's a 22mm fold, then a 28mm fold, and that's mirrored on the other side. And then we've got an 8mm diameter hole set. It's set 36mm, which should be exactly central on this area here. And then 12.5mm back will fit you will fit exactly halfway in the square tube. The hole itself only actually needs to be 6mm, but I've added 8mm because it gives you a little bit of tolerance to adjust the shelf if you cut the aluminium wrong somewhere, or you make some other mistake in the build. This will just make it a little bit more forgiving. And you also want to countersink that hole, so you want to countersink it on the inside, so within this channel. The base panel, again, this is just the overall width of the rack, so it's 446 by 795. Hopefully you'll get that cut by the aluminium supplier. Then each corner is just cut to fit around the square bars. I don't drill these, or didn't drill these. I wouldn't recommend drilling them in advance. You could if you're confident with your measuring and setting out, but it's probably easier and safer just to fit it in the rack, and same with the back panel. I've cut the corners off the back panel because you don't want to screw them into the square tube connectors, and it means that you're not going to risk catching the corners if you pull the rack or whatever. So I've already covered the tube connectors, reinforced at the top because we will fit a riv nut into these. Threaded inserts at the base, just there'll be a hole here with a little thread so you can just screw a caster straight into it. And then the corner braces. And then we've got the rails. These are all the overall size of the rails. So you can just get these to your aluminium supplier and get them to cut them to size for you. These are the centers of the holes running along there. So if you use a tape measure, for example, to measure them out, you can just run a tape along the full length of the bar and mark the ones off you want. They're all centered, so they're all 12.5mm along the horizontal dimension. So the top hole, you only drill a 6mm hole through the bar. So you want to put in the tube connector, then you drill through both the bar and the tube connector. Remove the tube connector, drill through with a wider drill bit, and then you can put your riv nut directly into the tube connector. You're going to want to countersink this hole then for the screw. All of the others you just drill straight through to the size of the riv nut. One thing to mention here is riv nuts do vary in dimension. So here's a riv nut at the bottom. You need to drill to the outer dimension of this. So I used M6 riv nuts, and the outer dimension of the riv nut was 9mm, so I drilled with firstly a 4mm bit, then a 6mm bit, and then I went up to 9. You may find that yours are just 8, they may be 8.5 or 9.5. It does vary between manufacturers, and I actually bought different riv nuts from different suppliers, and they were slightly different thicknesses. I think one was 8.5 and the other was 9, and I ended up using mostly the 9mm ones. Same for when you go to do the M4 bits, they'll be slightly different. You can use a caliper to measure the diameter of the riv nut, or you can just hold it up against the drill bit and see how it works out, which is what I did. So this image here just shows where the riv nut sits into the skew tube connector. All of these, after you've drilled the holes, you want to countersink them with a countersink bit. Okay, next, once we've got all those drilled and ready to go, we can just assemble the frame, and it just push fits. So you just push the connectors together in each corner, making sure that these holes are facing each other, facing inside. And then we go into the back panel. The back panel is really simple, so you just want to lay the rack down on its face, lay the back panel on top of it, clamp it into place, make sure all these edges are flush, all 4 of these edges are flush, and hold them down with just some clamps. Then you can drill through both the back panel and the frame, remove the sheet, and then widen the holes to the width of your riv nut and countersink all the holes. On the inside of the back panel, I've just put some draft excluder tape. Then we go for the base. So the base panel, the screw position isn't really critical here, just make sure that it misses the square tube connectors on the corners. I've just gone for 2 on the back because the back isn't really ever going to get any sort of stress. I put an extra 1 on the front just because it may get sort of lifted if you're hitting it with the tub, pushing it in there. The base panel is held on with M4 screws, so you again put it in place, drill through as you did with the back, and then widen the holes, but they'll be smaller this time because it's M4 rather than M6. And then once it's on, you can just assemble the shelves. So the shelves are all ready folded and they just screw into place. And then we can put the braces on. So this is the front of your rack with the tubs in, and then we look at the side, and this is the other side. You just want to put these braces in each corner, put all the braces on and hold them on with clamps, and that will just make sure everything is perfectly square before you start drilling. Finally, we're onto the heating system. So I just went with a back panel heating system. This is approximately 9 meters. I left a little bit of slack So if you make a mistake, or if these radiuses are slightly larger than you might expect, then you've got a bit of tolerance. You're not going to run out of heat cable and find it finishes up down here somewhere. What I would recommend, firstly, you drill a hole down here. This hole only needs to be wide enough to fit through the cable, so you could get away with like a probably 8mm hole or something like that. But you're going to want to put a rubber gusset on it, or rubber grommet, sorry, on this, just to protect all the sharp edges, and that'll prevent the cable from wearing on this and cutting or getting damaged. I would just drill the hole to suit whatever grommet sizes you can get, and I think mine were about 15mm. Obviously you can put this hole on either side, it doesn't matter which way you go, it depends on which one's easier for you, which side you want your cables to come out on. Even if you put it on the wrong side, you've probably got enough slack in the cables that come with the cable and the heat cable and the thermostat to sort of stretch around, but it's obviously a bit neater if you get it right first time. That's just offset slightly because you'll need a little bit less heat on the top than you will on the bottom, because obviously heat rises. So what I would suggest doing is start off with roughly measure this out, set it out based on these dimensions, and put a little dot with a marker at each end of the cable. Then you can run your cable and hold it temporarily in place with some masking tape or something similar, and just test the fit before you start sticking on your cable clips. Once you've got it all set out how you like, you can then stick on your cable clips, and you just want to put enough on to hold your cable in place safely and securely. A lot of people have asked about how you actually set up the heating system. I know a lot of people don't have experience with thermostats. This is just a very sort of schematic version of how it would work. So let's start off with the red cable is obviously a heat cable. We've got our thermostat fixed in the corner here. You could fix it on the other side, you could fix it on the top somewhere. I did actually think about maybe putting like a hinge on this back bar and having it so it folds back into that recess on the top of the rack. There's lots of options. You can put it wherever you want. Doesn't change the setup of the heat of the cables. So the first thing you're going to do is run your sensor across. So this green wire is the probe. You just want to run it across the frame wherever is convenient and stick it on the back panel. Try and space it away from the cables. You don't want it actually sitting on one of these cables, but roughly halfway between them. You could have it as far as here. Doesn't really matter. I would probably just stick it on the first one, depending on the length of cable you've got with your thermostat. And you can just hold that in place with another stick-on cable clip, and you can hold the cable around the frame again with a stick-on cable clip. Next you've got to plug the heat cable into the thermostat. So the thermostat has a input socket, which again you just run around, plug these in together, and it is literally a socket and a plug. Push them together, done. Then you have your main power supply, and you can just run that down wherever you want and connect it to your power. You might want to put like a cable tidy or something on here rather than just sticking it to the frame. It's up to you. There's space there, 25mm space there before the shelves. If we so you've got that space there where you can stick your cables, and you can put like a cable tidy if you want, just to make things look a bit neater. But to be honest with you, you probably won't see it, especially if you get a couple of racks in the future. The cable management is not a big issue, but you can do it quite tidily if this area is exposed. And that's basically it. You just then set up your tubs, check the heat inside the tub, and adjust the temperature on the thermostat to suit. You're probably going to want to leave it like a couple of hours to warm up and then check it. You just want to use a digital remote thermometer to test the temperatures across your tub. Make sure you've got a good heat gradient, make sure it's not too hot at the back. You'll have some variance. I think on my rack there's about 1.5 degrees between the bottom tub and the top tub. It really depends on your local climate, but if you do have a very cold house or very cold room with your snakes, then you may want to put a couple of heat mats in there. Here's a quick demo just showing how you could use a heat mat. It literally just slides under the gap, and there's just enough space there for the heat cable. So that is it. The plans are now available on Gumroad for whatever you want to pay. You can get them for free, or if you want to help a channel out, you can pay whatever you want. If you do decide to build this rack, I'd really love to know how you get on. Please feel free to message me on here, or Send me any photos on Instagram. Again, I'll try and help. If you hit any problems with it, just let me know. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one.